Well, good morning, all. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. My name is Bob Henry. I'm a federal system engineer with Fidelis Cybersecurity, and I'm going to take you through our platform capabilities with regard to Zero Trust today. Appreciate everybody's time and look forward to doing this. Let me just cancel my video so that we don't have any interruptions and it's a little less distracting. Okay, so moving forward, a little bit of background about Fidelis. We are a US-based company. We're based in Bethesda, Maryland. Our development is done in the United States. We have had a long history, having been founded by a retired Marine in the 2002 timeframe. Obviously, our secret or our bread and butter at that time was in.
Do me a favor, send
the DLP, network-based DLP solution, and then along about 2015, we picked up our Endpoint product and put an EDR capability in place that allows us to tie together network and endpoint events simultaneously and automatically, which is very important to being able to address cyber threats at cyber speed, which we'll talk a lot about today. Along about 2017, continue to innovate the products and bring them together, and we acquired the third leg in our stool of products, if you will. That is our deception capability. It's really a game-changing technology, and we're going to talk to that today and then get into the weeds and explain how that's all going to fit into this architecture going forward for customers. Today that we have this moniker called Elevate, which is our platform, and I'll have more to say about that in just a minute. So just a little bit of background to get us started. Where we've been in terms of the last 20-ish years.
Bob, I'm sorry, I think we lost your audio.
Yep, you did. Got it now. So anyway, we started, we have a lot of capability within the product space, and our customer penetration goes across various vertical markets as well as a large footprint within the U.S. government space. For permission reasons, I guess, I'll just say it that way, we did not show the logos of the various customers that we have, but I can share that Air Force is probably one of our longest running customers, and DISA is certainly a large customer of ours. So we were able to work in the smallest agencies and smallest small business markets on the commercial side, as well as the largest federal deployments of networking on the globe. What the Elevate platform looks like, this is kind of a pseudo-logical architecture slide. And I'll just start at the bottom here, and basically what we provide is a sensing capability, right? So we have network sensors, we have endpoint agents, and we have deception decoys. Those are the places where the heavy lifting gets done, kind of at the point of attack for the adversary, and where we generate a lot of capability. And we're going to have a lot to talk about today, so I'm hoping that you will bear with me as I go through that. On the network side, it's our longest running product, as I stated earlier, and clearly, it's capable of being deployed into every size environment that there is. So we've done things in low swap space. We've done things at the 100 gigabit per second range, and we do everything we do with the network sensing is at cyber speed. So that's really where the secret sauce is, and we'll get into that with the further discussion down the road. But whether you're in the cloud, you're on prem, you're in a Humvee, we have form factor and incident response team, cyber protection team, capable resource. We have form factors and capability VMs and other capabilities in the cloud are obviously VDH and as well as or VHD, sorry, and AMI for those particular environments, and the variety of sensing technology, which I'll describe later. That sensing technology is going to look at all ports, all protocols on the wire at the same time, and it's also doing some other things that we've added to the product over time, especially with the deception acquisition, to bring in a cyber terrain piece. All of that heavy decoding of network traffic generates a tremendous amount of metadata that is collected and retained for analysis ongoing, retrospectively, and analytically. And all of that data can be shared. So you'll see seam SOAR here, and I'll have another architecture slide on this later, but everything we're doing at the heavy lifting layer on the sensor side is shareable. So we're not an enclosed proprietary system. We're deliberately designed to interoperate within architectural constructs to do the cyber defense mission. The endpoint agents are, the typical business operating system capabilities. Our endpoint agent also is looking at all I/O on the box. Is basically an EDR platform. It is script based, so any script you can generate, purchase, steal from GitHub, if you will, you're welcome to use those in the process of prosecuting your detection and response capabilities for securing your endpoints in the architecture. And again, lots of metadata goes to that, and we'll talk to that and demonstrate that today. Deception. So the deception decoys is basically, if you can think of it as a single server that can run literally thousands of systems simultaneously and set them up in a couple of minutes. It's very agile. It's very, I call it high speed, low drag in terms of deployment and resources capabilities, right? So just a server can really change the game with the adversary. And from a background perspective, I spent 7 years working with the Department of Defense as a contractor in the Pentagon, and one of our key tenets was, reduce the attack surface, right? That was a key thing when we've been trying to do that a long time. And I think what we have to keep in mind as we go forward in looking at architecture is, wouldn't it be great if it wouldn't be so easy for the adversary to pick us off, right? As soon as they get through the defenses we put in place, they always hit a real endpoint. They always hit a real target. It may not be the most opportune target, but it's enough to get them in the door and establish persistence and make lateral movement. That's the way the game is played. So wouldn't it be nice if we could kind of trip them up on that? And so that's where deception comes in. We actually expand the attack surface, give them targets of interest and opportunity that can either deter them, that can or contain them, right, and provide a deferred, a detour, if you will, that takes them off track and slows them down. At the same time, it is an early warning system for cyber defenders, right? It's not a noisy capability. As soon as activity is seen in a deception environment, we're running emulated systems, so they're not real OSs at the base layer. So, at the end of the day, somebody's engaging with those. They're doing so because they believe that they can achieve their objectives. And the good news is they've exposed their location within the cyber terrain to us, which is huge. And we'll get into that today with the demo. At the green layer, that's where the intelligence plugs in. So the cyber analyst plugs in, the data science plugs in. We have machine learning and AI models running within that green layer to do analytic assessment of activity. Our threat intelligence, your threat intelligence, Joe's threat intelligence that he's curated from surfing the dark web, whatever it is, can be consumed there. Completely open architecture. So whatever you have, we can take in, and we're going to apply it at both layers, right? We're going to apply it at the sensor layer and the green layer simultaneously. So we can tell you, you know what, it's great that this 0 day was released by US CERT, the FBI, whomever gave you that threat intelligence today. Unfortunately, your 0 day was last Tuesday, right? And so here's all the details you need, and here's the impact that it's had so far in having detonated in your environment. And so now you have your remediation targets, and your response actions can be easily defined. You didn't have to roll a truck to a site. You didn't have to pull log files. You didn't have to rerun PCAP. You can do all of this in real time. Our metadata is, considerably less overhead from a resource perspective than, say, PCAP solution, but we do integrate with a PCAP solution as well. So if you've got that and you want to tie our metadata into the PCAPs, be able to pull those artifacts together and really to do a forensic triage of an existing event or an emerging event, those capabilities are built into the product today, so you can make that happen. Up in the left-hand corner, just to cover the architecture, we have our own sandbox capability. So we're doing that malware detection. We have 4 different ways to do that on the network product, a few different ways on the endpoint product, and the deception product participates. So if the adversary uploads malware into, as it tries to use a decoy as a pivot point, we will detect that. One saved thought on deception is that we are an emulation-based capability at the front end, which is important to save time and resources. However, customers do have requirements to take it a next step further, or who want to do a little bit more nuanced deception capability, and they want to run copies of their existing systems. And so you can think of it as like the DMV, and I want to make sure that if the adversary is looking for a way to create free licenses or generate fake licenses using my systems, right? What I want to do is I want to give them the opportunity to play around in ostensibly what is the old honeypot technology. And we'll get into that. But at the end of the day, we can run what we call real OS decoys right alongside your emulated decoys and give you that complete robust spectrum of capability depending on what your mission set is and how you are postured from a cybersecurity posture perspective. So I think that's really important. There is built-in seam sort into our architecture natively. However, again, we can export any of the data that we're generating into those environments, and we'll demonstrate that today. So hopefully that gives everybody an understanding of how we fit and what we do. And there's one more thing that's happened since we started putting this together. And I'll get to that. I reordered my slides and just found it. So we'll talk about network first. So we're going to detect and respond to threats, prevent data loss, DLP, right? So the biggest thing that we bring to the table when it comes to zero trust at the onset is the data loss prevention piece. It's under the data pillar. It's a no-brainer. And we do that harmonize that across various attack vectors in the DLP space. And we'll talk about those later. But the other thing that we're bringing is cyber asset mapping and terrain, right? You have to understand what's in your environment, how they communicate, who's talking to who, when, and that terrain is dynamic now, right? It's cloud-based, it's dynamic, it scales, it comes up, it comes down, systems come in and come out. Even our workforce doesn't just show up for work anymore. They're coming in from all different vectors, right? So we have to be able to see the cyber terrain. We have to have access to it in real time. And we have to know what's interacting with our infrastructure, our cyber terrain, whether it's supposed to be there or whether it's adversarial activity. That's where the network traffic analysis fits in, obviously. If you have a threat hunting capability, then we can provide resources to those folks to enable them to do that. I already talked about the sandboxing malware protection. Again, biggest differentiator in terms of what Fidelis does is we are a layer 2 to layer 7 technology. And what that means is we're looking at the entire TCP/IP stack in terms of the data on the wire and what's happening, not just up to the session layer, not just NetFlow records. We're talking about everything. So if somebody transmits, a zip file, and that zip file has a PowerPoint, and that PowerPoint references an Excel object, and that Excel object has VB macros. And those VB macros call PowerShell commands that you don't want running on your network. We're going to find that, right? And we're going to show it to you, and we're going to say, hey, that PowerShell script, here's the MD5 for that. Maybe somebody else embedded it in something else. You might want to check to see if you've ever seen this anywhere else in the network. Is anybody else using this PowerShell script anywhere? It's going to give you that ability to go back in time and say, hey, is this particular payload already detonated somewhere else in my environment, and this is just a new attack vector that I didn't know about, or am I in the clear, right? There's nothing better than them being somebody showing up and saying, hey, this is the US CERT, and we've got this big challenge. Like we've had several of these this year. Here are the IOCs. And you can plug those in, if not through an automated threat feed that does it automatically. You can say, I don't trust, all of the machine stuff. I'm going to take that MD5 hash, SHA-256 hash, that file name, user ID, email address, domain, you name it, right? Or whatever the ad attribute is, you can plug that into our collector and say, have we seen this object? And when it says no, you have a really high confidence that you're not part of the campaign, the attack profile that's being reported. So allows you to go back to work and then work on other challenges that you might have any particular day. So again, really changes the game with regard to how we do cyber defense. The Endpoint EDR product, again, agent-based, has threat intelligence, has all the same capabilities, definitely focused on the giving the SOC the enablement that they need to protect endpoints in real time and be able to see those wherever they are in the world, whether they're at Starbucks headquarters, on a plane, or in a foreign country, right, where they may or may not supposed to be, depending on whatever happened, right? But maybe they just got their flight canceled because they weren't supposed to be there, and then the pandemic hits and they're stuck. So wherever they happen to be, we can see them, interact with them, support them, and it's fully integrated with our platform. Having said that, there is yet another agent problem. Changing out agents is challenging, especially in the EDR space. So we do interoperate. Our product suite interoperates today with SentinelOne, Carbon Black, and others, McAfee. So if you have an endpoint solution and you want to kind of tie that together and make it easy, we've got those connectors and integration points already in the product. So not a challenge there, not a deal breaker if you prefer to use somebody else's EDR capability, which is quite often the case for a variety of reasons.
Yes, sir. Got a question for you.
Sure.
What about mobile on that endpoint? I did not see anything in there. How do you handle mobile devices as part of the cyberspace?
Yeah, so we rely basically on other third-party MDMs to do that space. It's not an area that we have focused on, to be honest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just it's a very competitive environment, and so you got to pick your targets. In any event, in the deception space, again, whether you run our network product or not, you're going to get asset discovery and classification. You're going to get the ability to deploy the decoys the way you want them. You can automate that, right? That's the key here, right? So the old honey grids, honey nets, very manual, highly resource intensive from a machine perspective, from a human perspective. Ran into some big challenges with friendly fire in those types of environments where you have to keep them just as patched and secure as the regular operating systems, which makes it a much more challenging endeavor. We have come up with automation and a product capability that does that for our customers. Automating decoy distribution and making them change and agile and dynamic is important. And ultimately, the goal is not to create a lot of activity. The goal is to create high fidelity alerts, right? So we have plenty of alert fatigue issues out there. What we want to say is, hey, look, when the adversary comes in and they manage to get through, they actually hit a decoy maybe instead of a real asset. If they do hit a real asset, we've got some things we can do in that regard. And if they pivot off that real asset, we're going to be able to detect them. The differentiator for deception between others and ourselves is just the function of the fact that we have the network product and the ability to do that all ports, all protocol analysis and retrospective forensics. So once an adversary knocks on what I call the proverbial fake house that you put in the neighborhood to kind of lead the adversary away from your house with your TV, when they show up on that house and knock on the door to see if anybody's home to take the TV or the high value asset, the data, right? Then basically you can do the retrospective analysis. Say, okay, how did they get there? Where did they pivot from? Did they rent a room in a house five doors down to keep watch on the system for the last 30 days? How long have they been here? And what was their initial attack insertion point? Right? What actually allowed them to get through the defenses? So we can answer all of those questions in a couple queries, and it's very quick and point and click. When I say query, it's not like writing scripts. And I got the concept up there of adaptation to talk to. So I think I've covered everything here. One thing I should cover, though, is there are a couple other layers to deception beyond the systems, which is the breadcrumb piece. So you actually deploy the breadcrumbs into your real environment. These are the proverbial passwords underneath the keyboard for timesheet, right? Nobody can remember their timesheet password, and accounting makes you change it every 30 days. So you just write it down on a Post-it note so you keep track of it. We take those and we put those Post-it notes out into the real environment. So here's the password for this system. Here's the most recently used SSH access. Here's some web cache. Here's some emails. Here's some NT share links. And so we put these into the real environment, distribute those automatically. And so what that does when the adversary does get to a real target and they want to pivot, they're going to look for those opportunities to say, how do I fit in here, right? Where can I go that no one's going to say this is unusual, right? That's their objective typically. And so we have that addressed. We also tie into Active Directory. So we install the machines in Active Directory, install fake users in Active Directory, and monitor the Active Directory to look at usage. So if an adversary takes a real credential, or I should say a fake credential, and tries to apply that to a real target or a decoy, doesn't matter. But it's obviously worse. They're taking a fake user and trying to use it against a real asset in your environment. We're going to go ahead and detect that and flag that as a decoy interaction that needs to be addressed because something is clearly amiss. And so those are the other pieces of the puzzle in the deception configuration piece that are part of that solution. What does that look like? It's about reshaping the attack surface, right? And so ultimately what we're doing here is we're in this sense, we are taking fake systems and fake users. We're applying that to the cyber environment. We're dropping breadcrumbs into the environment to tie all that together and link the emulated or the real OS decoys into the real cyber terrain within your environment, keeping track of all of it, which is very important, and perhaps adjusting it and making it more dynamic for more efficacy. But at the end of the day, there's nothing that prevents this from us deploying an entirely fake network, an entirely fake enclave adjacent to, next to, routable through the real cyber terrain. And so that can be in the cloud, that can be in your data center, it could be a VLAN in an office building that's a high value asset, high value target. So completely fake area as well. So it's not just fitting in within the existing terrain. It's, again, creating targets of opportunity that the adversary finds convenient and easy to use or try to leverage for their means. Which again changes the game on them as opposed to just having their way with our assets and our cyber terrain, while we have an understanding of what our cyber terrain looks like at the same time, which is a huge win. As we talk about zero trust, I think that's going to be one of the biggest challenges. Configuration is going to be the challenge. Understanding how all these systems that we have interoperate, communicate, can be or can't be microsegmented to avoid self-inflicted denial of service. Right, those are going to be key challenges that we have to address, and our network and deception products are really going to open the aperture on that and make it much easier for us to put that architecture in place and know that it's going to work with the confidence that our missions will not be disrupted as we do this process, which is, again, going to be a huge advantage. Again, key differentiators, terrain mapping, retrospective analysis, covered those pretty well. Threat hunting, if you've got those capabilities within your environment or want those capabilities. We have a risk simulation capability, which is very, very cool from a perspective of, having the conversations of, how come the system is doing what it's doing and it's not protected better? And here's what's going to happen if we don't get that figured out. Ultimately, a little bumper sticker here, which I think applies. We spend a lot of money left of the first the attack vector, right? So the adversary gets in and they're able to move laterally, do their thing. We read about this every day, and it's cheaper for them. Right, it's very cheap. The latest stat I have is ransomware as a service costs $400. Right, so for us, that's a huge bill, both on the upfront left side where we didn't catch it, and on the downside where we got to get our data back, restore it, recover it. We don't pay ransoms anymore, hopefully, but at the end of the day, right, there's a lot of expense for us, and for the adversary, it's cheap and easy. And so if we can get them to have to spend some money, that changes their behavior, and changing their behavior should be part of our cyber defense posture. So we'll put that out there. Halo. So this was the fourth thing. This is now the fourth pillar in our platform. So we've already taken this and implemented it in the product. And so what you get today is you get the ability to have a cloud security posture management service running for your cloud assets. And that cyber terrain is mapped into your existing cyber terrain, because ultimately, as far as I know, for the most part, especially in our business line here, nobody's going directly to the cloud and throwing a match behind with a couple gallons of lighter fluid behind them and just burning it all down behind them. So ultimately, we're going to be going from, we're going to have this hybrid capability of the on-prem and the cloud. We're going to have dynamic workload. We're going to move workload back and forth. The pendulum's going to swing, and we're going to decide some things can't be in the cloud, or we have OPSEC reasons to not put things in certain places elsewise. And so ultimately, there's always going to be this sort of back and forth. And so being able to map the cyber terrain from cloud to on-prem, or what your global context looks like, is going to be a key capability in terms of keeping track of all this stuff. And Fidelis is bringing that to the table. And we're doing that with some really robust methodologies, which I'll get to in the demo. Again, Halo use cases, and this goes to some of the things I said earlier. Cloud misconfiguration is going to be a challenge. Data loss and leakage, understanding our microsegmentation architecture, automatically remediating some of those things. That's part of the Fidelis Halo story, and we'll have more to say about that. Microsegmentation is a key element of that particular aspect, and of course that fits into the zero trust architecture model very well. Ultimately, when you look at the Fidelis platform, then I really believe that we are ostensibly foundational capability. So whether you already have tons of capability, or you're just trying to figure out how you're going to reorient your architect, your cybersecurity posture and your architecture around that, we have a solution that's going to be able to inform and really drive progress at reduced cost ultimately to the enterprise. So I think that's very important. The everything we do, you haven't mentioned this yet, so I'll say everything we do is mapped into the MITRE ATT&CK framework and labeled there. So if you're utilizing capability there, or you want to utilize our attribute capabilities, everything in our platform is built on an API that we use and publish. So anybody who wants to come in and get data that we've collected is welcome to do so. We can export data anywhere and you can reprocess it there. One of the things that I hope to make a key point today is, as you take data from our system, if it's interactive and API based and you're making decisions as a policy decision point or policy enforcement point to do certain aspects of the architecture, and you want our data to make some of those decisions, that's going to be available in real time. And if on the other hand, you want us to export that data out to data lakes, my only concern there over time has been that it continues to be a reprocessing problem where it takes time to do that reprocessing. So something to keep in mind as you're thinking about your cybersecurity architecture as a point of reference. The yellow things here on the wheel, just basically saying, here are the things that we think you're going to want to have as part of your zero trust architecture. Advanced malware protection and digital forensics kind of fit into a category that's not technically what I would say foundational to the zero trust architecture. Some of them are endemic, some of them are outsourced. So however you want to look at that, that's fine. But these are some of the key capabilities that are going to fit into that zero trust architecture. We've been doing this for a while, so we have a lot to offer there, and we'll get into that. In fact, more than I can cover today. So ultimately, a little bit under the covers, what does our network product look like? Basically comprises three components, comprise a solution architecture there fundamentally. The sensor, where we're doing all of the deep session inspection, heavy lifting, layer 2 to 7. This capability is in line, and it is also in 80% of the cases so far, it's integrated in an out-of-band capacity. So more and more customers are moving to inline, and we have we're shipping when we ship appliances, once you get above 5 gig, or you can do some load balancing with VMs if you want, but at a certain point, it makes more sense to use some commodity hardware. We're shipping with those integrated decryption cards to do SSL, TLS decryption and monitoring, but we decrypt TLS, or I shouldn't say, we decode TLS today. We keep track of the certificates, the cipher strengths, and other attributes that are available from the TLS session itself that can be tracked and used for understanding what's going on in the environment. But if you want to get into the payload decryption business, then we can either provide that, or we can take feeds from different spaces. Ultimately, everything that's done in the green box gets transitioned over into what we call Collector, which is our fully indexed metadata repository. And from a resource and sizing perspective, the best thing I can tell you is that it's 97% more efficient than PCAP, right? Because we keep a copy of all the data that we've generated as a function of doing all the things within the green layer. But in terms and the sessions, and I'll get into what that looks like in a minute. But it's very fast. It's fully indexed. It makes answering questions very easy. Point and click for a tier 1 analyst to come up with an answer of has this payload ever detonated in our environment? Yes or no? I need to know, because otherwise we've got to shut the front door and shut the network down until we figure it out, right? Based on the emerging threat scenario, right? So it can be very very timely. Command post is our UI, and that's again where a lot of the machine pieces fit together from an analyst perspective, from a scheme store architecture, export perspective, et cetera. Moving ahead, just one point: if you run a completely closed architecture, as many of our government customers do, that's not a problem. For us, nothing in our solution space requires access to the internet whatsoever. Anything that you'd like to get in terms of our threat intelligence, product upgrades, whatever, all that is SneakerNet capable. We've built those integrations into the product today. So there's no dependency or reliance upon any sort of open access to the internet, and you don't need to share any data with us to be fully mission effective with our product space. So that's really the point of this slide. The other one is just to show the data lake there as well, that anything we're doing can be shipped off to other systems for processing and correlation as well. Sensors. So just keep in mind that if you're running at the 20, 50, 100 gig level, we have sensor and capability in a hardware form factor to do that, although all of these run as VMs and as cloud-based resources. The thing that I want to point out here most importantly is that we offer mail and web sensors. And as we put the architecture together, I think mail is one of the pieces that does not pop at people when they think about the zero trust model. So we're going to get back to that later. And the ICAP sensor, again, all of our decoding methodology is the same. We just put it in different form factors, which is huge. And our policy administration point is centralized. So our policies go across all the places we have sensing capability so that you don't have to rewrite policy for different use cases. And that's really going to be really important for making zero trust an efficient architecture to manage. The fewer policies you have to administer, obviously the faster things are going to work and the more seamless they're going to work more consistently. So for CASBs and other SASE type solutions, you can tie in our ICAP sensor and you can again bridge that. I'll show it later, but you can bridge the on-prem architecture and security posture to externalized cloud-based security posture or private, whether it's a private data center, a hybrid environment, public, private, you name it, we can put it there. So we can adjust to that. Again, visualization. So I think the important thing is most people don't take away from this idea that the automation that goes into this, right? So people understand Wireshark, but it's a very manual process. We actually do that sort of in the background and have that readily available for query and introspection from an analyst perspective, and makes it easier to understand what's happening in the environment. That visualization is very important. Ultimately, leads to what I've been talking about, which is the power to answer questions, right? So who did what, when did they do it, how did they do it, where did they come from? And as you can see, here are some of the examples of the metadata that we're generating. We have the decoding path, we have the URLs that were involved, the user agents that activated the activity, the server geography, server type, all those types of things are captured. Anything that we can capture attribute-wise off the wire, we're going to keep, store, and make available for processing at a fraction of the cost of PCAP in terms of time and resources. So very, very important thing to keep in mind. Now, again, we can share all this data with anything, and when anybody who wants to come in and query for this data through API interfaces is welcome to do so. So that's all built into the product, and those interfaces are there today. So as you get into thinking about policy decision points and where they're going to get their data and come up with criteria to make decisions for, say, ZTNA architecture, that's we could be a data source. Makes that very easy to do. Cyber terrain mapping. Yeah, so passive. So that's a big difference between what we do and what other people do.
All right, so make this pretty.
Anyway, so what I'll say is that when we're doing passive, we're going to have dynamic workload, right? Stuff is going to come and stuff is going to go. So we're going to pop into the printer, the print room. They're going to stick their home laptop because they didn't have time to grab their work laptop from their desk, 3 halls down, and they didn't want to carry it out of the building anyway. So they're going to pop in there and print out some documents, and boom, malware is in your environment that they brought from home. We're going to be able to see that activity and record it and give you the insight as to what that looked like and what that asset, where that asset showed up on the network, and et cetera. Just moving ahead really quickly, anomaly detection, 50 different models, supervised and unsupervised, are built into the analytics that we provide. You're welcome to add more, and they can be fully, they will alert and create activity maps that will show you where things are happening that might be outside of the norm, which is going to be, an area of growth for all of us in terms of automating and keeping up with the sheer breadth and depth of the cloud. Zero trust architecture, just a quick point, we mapped to the DoD reference architecture, which maps very closely to the one that we're using in the working group, which is on the next slide. So that everybody's seen this one, and in terms of how we fit into this, with all the capability that we're bringing, we're hitting 37 of the boxes with key core capability. Within the gray space, that's where we can add enhancement. And so as you're looking at your security posture, as customers are trying to wrap their hands around, okay, how am I going to buy 51 capabilities? You really have to look at how can I get the most bang for my buck, ultimately. And so I think we have a very good story to say on that, as well as being able to tie in with the things you have on the orchestration and API side of things. Ultimately, we do generate our own threat score, risk score, target evaluation, et cetera, there on the bottom. And so again, I think cross-cutting, that's shareable and usable, reusable with other solutions that are being stood up for doing these capabilities. terms of our pedigree, just yeah, we have the various certifications and APLs. We're on CDM. We are University of New Hampshire did our certification for IPv6. We have customers that are IPv6 only today, and they are using our products in that environment, both from a management perspective and from a data plane perspective. So, so I think that's a pretty good thing to point out here as we were dealing with mandates and architecture changes. Automation is the key. It's not always clear where automation fits in or doesn't fit in. I think some people think that means, you know, the machines do things, but sometimes it just means that that repetitive tasks that we ask our cyber analysts to do investigations, to figure out where the data is, we automate some of that stuff in the background and make it visible at much faster pace, if you will, bubbling it up into the pane of glass that they need, so that they're not digging through the windows and clicks and depths and menus, searching for the information that they ultimately need, which improves accuracy of detection overall, and ultimately is the faster response thing is really important, because while we'll build zero trust, it's going to be a case where the adversary is going to adapt. They're going to figure out where the seams are, how to, they maybe, you know, we got to think about the idea that they're going to do more social engineering to harvest credentials, encourage people who are maybe not as happy in their work life, who want to share their credentials, you know, and so there are going to be issues there, and so we have to be prepared to defend against those types of attack vectors, which we've seen in the past, and we'll see them in the future. Just kind of want to walk through as part of the zero trust requirements here. You know, what are you using? What are you showing? What are you doing? So our Elevate architecture looks like this, in the sense that I've talked about command post and collector, the sensors we have. We will not be showing on-prem sandbox today, but I'm just showing that it does fit into the on-prem architecture. Deception is a server, sits there, and then you can have an ICAP server or your data lake, wherever that happens to be. We can ship data there from the command post or from the collector as needed to make that applicable. Obviously, if you have capability and wants to tie in from an API perspective, they can make direct queries into our solution architecture here as well. So this is what on-prem looks like, generally speaking. You've got perimeter gateways, you've got email servers, right? We got cover down on all those spaces. And then, you know, ultimately we're going to be transitioning, or we already have, right? We should be transitioning to cloud and zero trust, right? So basically our appliances ship as I said, VHDs and AMIs, et cetera. You can stand them up and spin them up in your cloud environments, and they tie back into your existing infrastructure. Right? So if you have command posts and you want to put, you know, a mail sensor in the cloud, but you don't, you know, take it off prem, you can do that. If you want to have a deception in the cloud, right, it all can talk centrally back to, it's not a separate architecture for different architectural experiences. It's just about putting the right capability in place. And from a licensing perspective, we're subscription based, which means we have a lot of flexibility in terms of how those assets are deployed, and also how they're managed. And so it's not quite the expense profile of all the boxes you see on the screen. I just want to kind of point that out. What we're providing today is we're going to be looking at, you know, we're going to be providing insight. We're providing, which is our threat intelligence feeds. We have the collector stood up. Everything's running a VM on a single server today for this demo. Fidelis command post is out there. We have direct sensor. We have an internal sensor actually, which is the same as a direct sensor. We have Fidelis mail sensor running against mail transactions. Our mail sensor is ostensibly an MTA, but it can also run in Milter mode, and it can also run in BCC mode if you have different security postures you want to use around email, as opposed to putting us into the MTA, the transfer chain between different systems. Totally up to you, but we do fit in all those different with that flexibility. Deception, we just want a lot of that. Okay, and I do actually have a slight demo on doing a data lake transfer, so we'll get to that hopefully too with the time we have remaining. So we're going to do questions at the end, so I'm just going to keep going today. And we're going to get into the interactive part of the demo, and you know, it's a live demo. I'm going to try to do that today to make sure that we can reveal the fact that it's not smoke and mirrors. And I'll do a quick demo here, and it's going to require a couple screens, so bear with me. So ultimately, let's look at, yeah, of course, it's always, yeah, the timeout's working. Let's look at, do a little bit of overview from a command post perspective, what the analyst sees. And so I'll have our MITRE ATT&CK dashboard. coming into the office this morning, we seem to be doing better today than we were yesterday on some things to the left side of the attack stage. We got some new evasion techniques showing up. And again, overall command and control, those are the places we're going to want to put resources today to figure out what those things are about and what's going on with those. And I would just click this and it will take me into those alert profiles. In terms of cyber terrain, I said this is very important, and I think it is. This is what our environment looks like. From an inventory perspective, we can export this out. We can save it to a file. We can see where the attack framework fits in with what we're seeing. We can overlay that, and ultimately, we have some visibility into what kind of operating system and devices we have. Versus green is ours, by the way, everything in the environment, and the blues are where we have endpoint deployed. Gray is where we have decoys and decoy capability deployed. So you'll see those guys down in here in the little jackets. We also expand out what those servers do and services that we see them doing in the environment. So we can see that type of information. We can also tag important assets, and we can see where we have endpoint agents deployed on our systems. In terms of subnet architecture, we can see all the subnets and where assets are located and what their attack profile looks like, or attack, I shouldn't say that. Their threat profile, risk profile is red here. There's a lot, risk is 10. There's a lot of bad things happening in the demo environment. The domains that we've seen on the network, one way or the other. Operating systems, obviously, vendors, roles is kind of cool. So we can see roles, different types of IDs. So this is all just show and tell. Ultimately, that gets down to one other thing that I like to show, just in terms of some things that come up sometimes, is we can look at HTTP tools, and we can just to see how fast this is. Right, we can see versions of Microsoft Bits. I like this one because this was an FBI all not last year, where if you had a version less than 7.8, they wanted you to fix it right away because it turned into a command and control vector for the adversary. But in any event, we can see those assets that have the right version. We can see assets that have the wrong version. So we know where to maybe put our assets. Just a different way to look at the challenges on the network that might be popping up in a sense of the speed at which the system works. We do map vulnerabilities within the architecture, which is just to get rid of this. And so we have our own vulnerability management capability. We can take inputs from your active scanning solutions to improve our visibility. We can also export this out to those, and they can use the information there as well. So it's a two-way street depending on how you want to do vulnerability management, but we're collecting it, and it can be used elsewise. We also apply these on the decoy layer, which I think is important to note. We'll actually drop these types of vulnerability into the decoys to interact with the various tools that the adversary may use, so they get the responses that they expect to get when they engage. Communications mapping is again a visibility tool. You can get to this in a couple different ways. I just clicked on it. I will show this for the sake of overview. If I go into an asset, I can show what it's talking to, how it's interacting with the environment, but I can also run a red team simulation on it, and with that, I can figure out if this asset's going to be a bigger problem if the adversary gets to it. Yeah, a couple clicks into the attack cycle, and we think they're going to own a large majority of these systems pretty quickly. So in terms of keeping the system protected, that could be a good thing and an easy conversation to have internally to say, okay, here's how we think the adversary is going to move in the environment if we don't take care of this system. So again, could be useful for a variety of use cases in the zero trust architecture space. Okay, so the other thing that we are running today, so I should point this out, is we are running our endpoint solution here. So I'll just go ahead and demo that very quickly in by way of overview. And it is I'll go into behaviors really quick. And we can show process, network file, everything that we're seeing in the environment. We can search and query for. If you look at process in the last hour, just to give you some sense of what we're processing there. Don't have a lot of endpoints running, but you can see all the different services and executions that they're doing. And you can drill into those if you wanted to from a forensic perspective, if you were that so engaged as an analyst. On our endpoint side, just 3 endpoints running for simplicity, Linux, and 2 Windows systems generating activity, as well as I can see what's installed on those systems. And we also have which is software inventory, again, cyber terrain, as well as a live access, so I can actually connect into these systems remotely. And anywhere in the world, even at Starbucks, if I had some intentionality around a particular issue that I was having, right, I can get onto that system and I can start doing some triage as a cyber analyst if I had to. So so a little bit of a reverse shell, if you will, but effective. Okay, so with all of that, I'm going to pivot into the more active demo. This is kind of the overview. And what I want to take you into is a little bit of understanding on the deception side, some things we've done. So we have some decoys in the environment here, running various systems and types, right? So I've got a Linksys router, I've got a workstation with a bunch of services open. And I've also got credentials, and I've populated these into Active Directory as well. And so I have those capabilities there. And I'm going to use Kelly here as an example. That's her password in case you wanted to know. And so I'm going to use her for the live demo. So let's go over and look at how this works from a demo perspective. And I'm now going to pivot into alerts over here. And this is around identity and access management, right? So got a couple things going on. Let's see if anything else going on in the last hour. Okay, good. Nothing. That's amazing. All right, so let's go over. So I'm going to do a little, we're going to assume that somebody has Kelly's credentials, has stolen them, obtained them from their keyboard, popped our Active Directory and captured those. And so we're going to try and log in as Kelly, see if we can get access to the things we want in the environment. And it really doesn't matter what password I use because that's not going to work. So there we go. That did not work. So do it one more time just for fun. Maybe I typed it wrong. Okay. So any luck being a live demo. This may take a bit, but we'll come back to that. So that's the first thing. The other thing that we should look at while that's processing, it may take up to a minute depending on timing, is we'll go ahead and look at the network metadata piece. And so what I want to show here from a demonstration perspective is we talked about a lot of things that we capture in the attributes. So if you just look at application users, authentication types, authors, certificate risk score, a lot of different things that we're picking up out of the environment. And I can just keep going on and on here. You can even pull event tags, things we've tagged with MITRE technique, functions and analytics that we've pulled up based on decoding and analyzing all of the traffic on the network. In our particular environment here, today we'll look at last 24 hours. Go into all metadata first. Oops. Always got to click the right place. So in the last 24 hours, we processed 2 million transactions on the network. It's not a very large network, but there's a lot of activity nonetheless. And then we can see the types of activity that have propagated across the network in that time. We can also see the files that have been transferred, right? I can dig into these if we wanted to, or we can exclude them and say, I can't do anything with the binary ones right now, and it's not really what I'm looking for, so let's exclude those. So that's how that works. And again, it's all cut our transactions down to half. Let's see, well, just to give you some idea. Meanwhile, back in the Hall of Justice, we can see that twice we have a failed credential alert. So somebody has taken credentials and tried to use the decoy credentials to authenticate to a real asset in my cyber terrain. And just to put proof in the pudding, see my domain controller and reporting that Kelly Woods failed to get into the domain using Kerberos pre-authentication. So so just a quick and easy demo to go over kind of how that works, talk about the fact that we're not going to just put out decoys out there and hope for the best. We're actually going to keep track of what's happening. We're going to come back to that. But that's just one example of how the system works. So moving forward then with the, I'm going to come back to the slides for a second. We've taken a look at Kelly, we've taken a look at some metadata. Let's talk about a real cyber attack situation scenario, right? So if any of you have followed up or been watching this, ESXi, VMware has become a target of various cyber criminals because it's an easy win for them, frankly. So in this particular case, a couple months ago, it was reported that this took place. And what's important to note is that the intruders gained access to the network by logging into a TeamViewer account, right? And that the attackers used advanced IP scanner to target attacks and find the ESXi server, and then they went after it, right, and got into it. So at that point, let's just work it from there. So from a bear with me here, from a how does this work perspective, we'll use our blue pill, red pill guy. We'll just pretend that VNC is TeamViewer, okay? And so I'm going to do something challenging here. I've already downloaded my advanced IP scanner tool, but I haven't installed it yet. I've got access to the system. I'm in the adversary here, right? So I've penetrated. I've figured out that this thing is just sitting here open to the world. I can access it. I'm going to have some fun with these guys, right? So I'm doing the same TTP as the adversary, right? I'm even going to run the portable version, right? So accept the license agreement. So we're getting here, boom, I'm up and running, right? This is cyber time. This is how long it takes the adversary to execute their mission, okay? Once they get in. So we'll go ahead and we'll launch the scan in the environment. This will take a minute or two. So with that in mind, let me go over, while that runs in the back, you can see it's already propagating information. We'll go over and we'll look at the anomalies that we can produce out of this environment. There'll be very few because it's pretty small, but at the end of the day, they're all clustered into various groups. You can break that down into more granularity. And then you can see up here, the family names are things like analytic events, logins, endpoint events, and such. So we've got various models against various types of activity that we can be tracking on the endpoint side or on the network side for doing this type of analysis. So we'll just cover that as part of the demo. Well, pretty much getting almost done. So they ran their thing. Let's see. They're looking for ES. Oh, look, we found an ESXi server. Fantastic. Now, here's the bad news, and I'll show you why. Bear with me. Okay, so the shell service is important. Sorry. So the shell service is not running on my ESXi server. So darn it all, I'm not going to be able to go after them with this particular attack vector. However, let's take a look at something on the alert side. Oh boy, I have a whole bunch of decoys that have been accessed from somewhere in the system. And if I look at this, it looks like they're all associated with this one IP address who ran all these attack vectors. Okay, we can dig into that. We can start looking at all these things. But at the end of the day, I now know that I have this asset, which is instrumented with my endpoint, by the way. So we'll get back to that. I have this attack vector, and I know that somebody has played with my decoy server. So here's the thing. They spent the next 3 hours after discovering what they wanted to do, coming up with their attack solution, right, and going after it. But if I'm the cyber defender, I already know they're there. I'm not going to give them 3 hours, right? I'm going to have, the system is going to have taken these alerts, passed them along to the SIEM, the SIM, an email message to my cell phone that's going to start that's going to an SMS server that's going to send me a, hey, we got problems on the network that we want to, they're urgent. We can do all of those different things. We're now riding in parallel with the cyber attack timeline, right? We're not finding this out the next day. We're not waiting to find out that the log files on the ESXi server showed somebody logged in who shouldn't, right? Days later. So that's what we're doing, right? So we've now tripped up the adversary in essence, so that while they're doing their thing, we're going after them. So they take 3 hours. So let's look at what we can do in the next couple minutes. So one of the things that I've done, one of the things that we'll see in here, I think, is they've also done me a favor and found an unauthorized internal web server, which is kind of interesting. So that happens to be this 101. So if I went to the 101 asset information, I would find that web server. I know it was there. but I haven't put it into the environment variables of the product to say that this is somewhere that people should be regularly browsing on my network. And so with that, if I find those things, I've created a playbook in my environment that says, if you find an unauthorized internal web server, I want you to run a who's currently logged into that system and run that question. And so it's going to do that. And so what you'll see up here is look at that, and ran that recently, which I can highlight, and I can run over to the task results. And I can say, show me the result. With any luck, it says Neo was logged into that system. That's great. And while we're here, let's see what else Neo is doing on the system that's apparently attacking my my network. Sorry, let's go into behaviors. And we'll see what kind of processes have been run in the last hour. Oh, look, advanced IP scanner was run, and I alerted on it, right? So even just the act of downloading and installing the attack vector, actually it'll set up an alert that was probably exported out, and I got on my cell phone at 2 in the morning to say, somebody's doing some things you don't want to be doing. This is out of the box. I didn't have to program this. This is a natural detection. And so those are the types of things that we're going back and forth on. And then, you know, what I want you to understand, this all seems like a lot of things going on, but it's the automation behind it, right? So it's not finding the logged in user that was important there. What I want to show you is how this ties into tipping and queuing back and forth across a dedicated platform. So if I go in and I look at unauthorized folder login here, I ran a job to say, tell me who the logged in user was, which is recorded down here in the alert workflow. We keep track of the things that we do in response to alerts, what the system does in response to alerts, or what users do in response to alerts. I also show that here, right? Currently user logged in via playbook, right? But I can also, I didn't have to run who's logged in. I could have run, you know what, turn that box off, right? This works in Starbucks, it works on the moon, right? I can take control of that system and say, only I can talk to that system until we figure out what this guy's doing. He's not going to be running any ransomware scripts on my network until I figure out what the heck this is all about. And I can run any script from here. These are the manual functions. I'm hoping that you're making the logical leap between what we can do, what I didn't show because I didn't really want to turn off my VNC viewer and that particular adversary. So that automation all happened in real time as a live demo, no smoke and mirrors. That's how we operate. Let's take the attack vector a little bit further though. So I can't do my ESXi attack. So I wonder if they got any, oh, they got FTP running. That's fantastic. Let's see if I can get into an FTP server. I can't run ransomware. So maybe what I'll do is I'll run, username would be, oh, I wonder if I can use Kelly and get in this way. Oh, excellent. It worked. So maybe I'll just run download my tools here. Maybe I can just do some crypto mining in this environment, take advantage of it that way. So I'll go ahead and I will download this into my documents folder. We'll transfer some files over there, right? I'll get ready to do my pivots and figure out how I'm going to take advantage of that. Maybe I'll download that from a couple other systems I find on the network. Okay, so we'll do that. Meanwhile, and this may take a minute, so we'll just go over and look at it for a second. Timing is good. So we'll go into alerts. And see what's happened on all things recently. Oh, look, malware Trojan and malware commercial. 2 files I just uploaded. So let's look at that. So the nice thing about this is this has already been done. This took a couple seconds, right? Now we've seen this malware before, so that's the report's cached. So we just send the sandbox report right back to the user from the cloud, right into the system, give them all the details they need. This can be shared with forensics folks. If you're a cyber analyst and you want to see what things this thing did, you can get into that from reporting functionality. So all that is already there. It's already done. there's some endpoint tasks that are happening to validate the transaction. But at the end of the day, I can see who tried to do it, how they did it, and what the decode path was. I can download from right here the actual executable. I don't have to run a script. I don't have to go to the box. I don't have to roll a truck. I can get the executable here if I wanted to. I could do it from endpoint and pivot over there as well. I can see the forensic data on the session of the transfer. Right, there's the MS-DOS program and some more information about that. So a lot of information available immediately to the attacker or to the cyber defender. I've also got an MD5 and a SHA-256 hash. So let's pivot to these and see if these have been running around in the network anywhere else. Just for grins and giggles. And hopefully many people are taking away the fact that this is and there's an alert. The red is our alert function here. And so taking away from the fact that this is all point and click enabled, right? We have some very good metrics from our customers. They take their folks, they send them to cyber weapons school, they put them in front of this console, they give them a mission and say, this is your TTP, your ConOps, and within 4 hours, they're basically mission effective. Huge win, right, from the training side, because it's all point and click. There's no scripts to learn. There's nothing that you really need to know in order to operate a Fidelis solution. So in the last 7 days, this particular artifact has been flying around on the network. I've been playing with it, obviously. And so the good news is my attack vector is limited to these 3 hosts, which is one of them is my decoy. Actually, 2 of them are my decoys, and one of them is the victim machine that I've been using. So I only have to remediate my victim machine, and it's been transferred over FSMB and via FTP. And file type is executable. I could even drill into this. I can see the details here. I can also see the decoded information here about the transfer. So again, these are the metadata attributes that were collected for all time and can be replayed. Okay, so we've done all of this. I haven't even gotten into, we can see this from a different view, deception activity. I think many people are probably getting the idea here. We also have a function called conclusions, which takes all the alerts that we generate and boils it down into specific events. You can also see that in this view. So if cyber analysts would prefer not to have to deal with single alerts like we've been doing today, we can actually jump in and we can see various alerts over the timeline that are all associated. So I now have 4 alerts or 1 function, and I can go deal with this one problem instead of thinking it as 4 different issues. And then that gets even better if you've got file folder manipulation here. You can see 1,843 alerts over time. And some of the details around that and the passwords that were used to try and access that account. So it's going to be very effective in terms of forensic analysis and giving the cyber defender the ability to move quickly within the cyber speed timeline of actually prosecuting an attack vector. Okay, I have a couple other things to show real quick and tie this all together. About 12. Kirsten said 10 minutes. I think we can get it done. So let's see if we can do this. So solar winds. Obviously, we all know about this. One of the IOCs is this particular domain. So if that were to come out today, if this was all to be brand new, if this was December 17th, 2020, let's look at how does that work and with Fidelis sitting out there doing its job. We're going to just drop back into network metadata. And for the sake of time, I'll just go back to here. Let's see. I typed that in there and it didn't come back to the domain. It's checking today. Let's see what comes back. So it'll take a couple seconds. Catch a breath anyway, so this will be good. The last thing that we're going to talk to is a little bit of DLP action around the mail sensor. So a little preview of what's coming. Actually, let's. I think because we're doing all activity, it's going to take a few more minutes, but I should have clicked it this way. So we'll just bypass this and we'll go look at this a slightly different way. So. Disappeared. Okay. So in the advanced section, we'll go into domain name. Now this is obviously doing it manually, right? So ideally, you would do this. So good. So it says no data found on that. If I didn't spell it wrong, let's go back and check. Oh, that's because it's an equal sign. My bad. Apply. If this was threat intelligence, this would be done automatically in the background. We would alert on it if it was coming in through an automated feed from US CERT or whatever. So this is the analyst checking to see if we've ever had this type of activity on the network. And darn it all, we have, right? And so we can see that over the timeline where that's occurred. I can get more specific about what's come back in this regard over time. And let's see, this is endpoint response. Just take a look at the details here. And so came back with no answer because it's, oh, look, it is CNAME is the record type. The domain is now protected from this type of adversarial activity. And so nothing's going to come back here. But that's an idea of how fast you can pivot from a threat indicator to understanding whether you've got issues in your environment or if you don't, right? Like if you did this query over the last hour and it came back with no transactions and that was all the data we had available, you proved a negative, right? You don't have this attack vector. You can go about working other issues that that you want to get done that day, or maybe having a cup of coffee, taking a break. All right, so data loss prevention and zero trust. Let's talk to that. All right, so this demo is going to be a little bit different. Go down here. Talk about 94% of all malware is delivered by email. So kind of an important point. We got to continue to deal with mail. There's a lot of mail solutions out there. There's a lot of MTAs, and it's still getting through, right? So where Fidelis fits in is we become part of that chain. We apply all of our technology to a mail, and we're good at it. So with that in mind, I want to go ahead and pull up my mail host. And we'll go ahead and we'll run a few emails. And I can even send this to a real domain. Box. This is the memo we need for a meeting. Memo. You've seen all the alerts today, so we know that this is not going to be anything new. We're going to hit send. I'm going to say something, and it's out the door. Okay, so we'll just see. I'm just curious. Okay, we'll get that in a second. So under back in alert land here, go ahead and sort by alert time. Oh, look, DoD classified in memo.docx. Wow, that's not good. There's the decode path, SMTP, MS Word, came through the SMT protocol by internal host for processing. So we can go ahead and you can see the attack vector is changing on the top of the screen there, the reload. DoD markings were found. Oh, okay, well, I know what that means. So we'll go ahead and we'll look. Here's the email and the headers, right? We don't have to go pull the email message. I can even pull the Word document out. I'm not a classification authority, so you'll notice I used the lorem ipsum, right, with my document to make sure that it wasn't anything germane. But anyway, point is, if we want to find CUI, CTI, straight old classified, other markings that we need to find, data tags that do or shouldn't exist in certain places, or that don't exist at all. If the document comes through with no data tags, I can reverse the logic and say if the data tag blah, blah, blah does not exist in documents coming from these spaces, then it should be something else. So so there you go, data loss prevention in zero trust environment using email. Meanwhile, back in my mail client, just for fun, memo doc was detected in your email. and it's been quarantined pending authority review and release. And if you believe this message has been, please contact the help desk at yougottobekittingme.com. Okay, so last thing to wrap it up, we can take any questions that people may have, but this comes up every once in a while. So let's go ahead and with the warnings here. I haven't totally secured this, but people ask, can you share this data with other things? What happens with that? And just a couple of minutes ago, November 19th, 12:09, right? There was an email that got sent. We need this for meeting, right? So I've already sent this off to Elastic, and it can be reprocessed all you want. If you want it to be Splunk, QRadar, ArcSight, whatever preference you have in terms of making sure that the data is available for processing, post-processing, whatever, we'll make that available with everything we have in the product. You got to set this side up, and that's a lot of heavy lifting to generate the dashboards and whatever, but there you go. So that's it. That is everything we wanted to cover today. Well, I'll just say thanks everyone again before we run out of time, and appreciate your help, Kirsten, today, and everybody coming along for the ride that we had.
Thanks, Robert. It's a great presentation.